everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of the Pink and Preview Show. We're a little bit later starting than we were sort of supposed to. We had the transfer guru, Paddy Davitt, on the phone updating us around some Norwich City transfer news, which we've just broken across our channels, which I'm sure some of you who are watching might have already seen. But of course, we're here to preview the trip to Anfield, so we'll get straight into that. Joining me to speak everything Norwich Liverpool is my colleague Connor Southwell. Connor, I mean, I was going to start sort of, I suppose, getting your reflections on the Leeds game, but I think given it's been a hectic morning, and I think the kind of narrative around this game has now been spun by a Liverpool boss by the name of Jurgen Klopp, announcing his departure at the end of this season. 9 years in charge, he's pretty much won it all at Anfield, certainly from a domestic and European perspective. Highest win rate of any Liverpool manager over 50 games in charge, so 60.7% win ratio. It feels like this game is now going to be sort of all around him. Your reaction to that news and what that might entail now for Norwich City heading to Anfield on Sunday?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jurgen. Not the ideal time, is it, from a Norwich City perspective? I think, like everyone else, really shocked actually when that kind of appeared earlier this morning, and the fact that it's before a Norwich game that already felt quite daunting now makes it feel incredibly daunting, because Anfield is going to be incredibly united, and there's probably going to be a renewed sense of purpose to winning that. Liverpool obviously still competitive in all domestic and European fronts that they're competing in this season. So as things stand, top of the Premier League, they're in the Carabao Cup final. They're obviously in the fourth round of the FA Cup, and they're going quite nicely in the Europa League as well. So there's an opportunity really to cap off what's been an incredible season, and obviously it will be up to Norwich to kind of quash the not a farewell party, because it's not quite that yet, but definitely there'll be a desire to lift the mood, celebrate, all of those kind of aspects. I'd expect it to almost be kind of a celebratory atmosphere almost on Sunday now. And it's, what was it, one league defeat in 52, I think or one defeat at Anfield in 52. It's going to be incredibly difficult, and it's not made any easier by that news from Jurgen today.
Yeah, actually lots of comments and questions flooding through. We'll try to get through as many of those as we can towards the end of the show. Jeffman asking the question, is there a press conference for today's game? Sunday's game. Yes, that is this afternoon, a 4 p.m. kickoff down at Colney. So me and Connor will be there later on today. Connor, 48 hours on, or just under 48 hours on from that Leeds defeat. Lots of positives to take. Maybe a lack of clinical edge, sort of chance creation the other night that maybe cost Norwich sort of the way they got the West Brom game where they had those couple of chances, they buried both of them, and that was enough to kind of win the game. They didn't really sort of do that, at Ellen Road on Wednesday. What lessons do you think Norwich learned from that game, and David Varane learned from that game, that maybe they need to look into heading to Anfield on Sunday, where it feels like they're going to maybe get very limited chances, and it probably is going to be about that clinical edge as to whether Norwich go and get a result there?
I think in many ways it's going to be kind of that ability to be able to link what they do in possession. They're not going to have a lot of it compared to what they had the other night, and in spells of that game they didn't have a lot of it, but what they did have they weren't particularly effective with. So it's about ensuring that there is quality on the ball to enable them to get up the pitch and relieve that pressure. And we know how Liverpool play. They push their fullbacks so high, but they're so good at controlling those counter-attacking situations. But you feel like Norwich City are going to try and exploit the space that Liverpool leave down the side. So that's going to require a quality and an ability to move the ball up the pitch, and to move the ball up the pitch quickly and effectively. But even if they do that perfectly, it's going to be so tough. And it's interesting. I saw last night, and I'll probably ask David Wagner about this later on. Luke Williams at Swansea kind of spoke about it a little bit. They got done 5-0 by Bournemouth last night, and he was kind of saying, well, probably put too many players ahead of the ball in the first half, and probably too many players behind the ball in the second half, and the players couldn't cope with either, and they obviously lost 5-0. I think they were 5-0 down at half time, and that was the kind of major issue that he felt. So that balance is so difficult to achieve, and as I said, you can go to Anfield, you can achieve it, and you can still lose 3-0. So a lot of things have got to go their way, and in many ways, I think people will tell you it's not a free hit, but there's no expectation on Norwich City, particularly given in light of this news, and it's a real opportunity to go and disrupt and to go and compete and test, and that's the way that it has to be viewed. And can they take anything from Leeds? I'm not sure, but if they can, I think it's probably that they need to ensure that the spells of possession they do have, they're able to connect that with obviously connect that with their attacking players, but also able to get them into the pitch, into positions where they're able to hurt teams.
Yeah, one player I want to focus on, Josh Sargent, of course, returned from injury against Millwall sort of just over or just under a month ago now. Last 3 games, he started all of them in the Championship. It's kind of been that sort of building up of his fitness that David Wagner spoke about. Scored a couple of goals, played as well, of course, in the first game against Bristol Rovers at home, started that game. Just your thoughts, I suppose, and feelings around what he's brought to, back to this Norwich team over the last month, because it was quite obvious, really, in that spell without him, how much they missed him, because I think there was a lot of sort of pressure and sort of, I suppose, focus on him. And in that period, we've not got Josh Sargent. He's the man who's kind of leading the line. Is he the player you thought, he would be when he's come back to this team? And what sort of lift has that been for Norwich, particularly going to Anfield, where they're probably going to need him?
Yeah, he's been excellent, hasn't he? I think he gives them so much in the press, and the threat that he offers in behind. I don't actually think he's been at the level maybe that we would hope yet, and that's understandable because he's come back from a long injury. But I think the flashes that he has shown has been excellent. But again, I kind of almost link him to the point that I made previously in terms of around this game, in that if Norwich City are to get the best out of him, they need to make sure they get him the ball more than they do. He didn't have a single touch in the opposition area on Thursday night. That's very problematic. He only had, I think, 10 touches at Hull off the top of my head, a few more against West Brom, but they didn't get the ball to him anywhere near enough. And if you're getting a player of his capability, chuck John Rowe with this and Borja Sainz into this as well. If you're getting them the ball in areas where you're then asking them to carry the ball up the pitch and then produce a moment of magic, it's going to be really difficult for them to do that. So they have to be able to connect what they're trying to do a lot better than they have done, in my view. But he's clearly been massive. He gives them, I think there's a confidence. And when he went through against West Brom, I think, and maybe it's the first time that I felt it with Josh Sargent, it was almost kind of the expectation that, well, he's going to score. And really that's the only kind of time I've had that feeling. Was with in the past. Sorry, the only time I've ever had that feeling in the past was with Teemu Pukki when he'd go through on goal, and it's really good that he's in that position. Even though it wasn't the best finish against West Brom, he did enough to make sure that it ended up in the back of the net. So, I was a little bit skeptical that maybe he wouldn't come back and be able to show what he's shown before his injury. I don't think he's quite hit those levels yet, but I think he's shown that Norwich City are an infinitely better team with him in it. And as for Sunday, it's going to be really difficult, isn't it, fitness wise, to ensure that he is where he needs to be in order to go again against Liverpool, given that this would be the third game in the week, and he's not really looked like he's capable of going for a full game yet. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just dipped him out of this one, to be honest. Not that I'm sure that he'll want that, because he'll want to test himself against Van Dijk and Quansah and all the rest of Liverpool's embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, you mentioned all the Liverpool players there. They're still in all 4 competitions this season. Top of the Premier League by 5 points, albeit Man City do have a game in hand. Of course, they got their place in the Carabao Cup final during the week by sort of beating Fulham over 2 legs. They're boosted by a lot of injury updates from Klopp yesterday. Trent Alexander-Arnold's probably going to be involved. Robertson, Szoboszlai's back as well. How tough is it going to be, Connor? Because we know Norwich haven't beat Liverpool in any competition in almost 30 years. The last win was 94 against Liverpool at Anfield. I think it's been 18 games since then, 16 defeats, 2 draws. So it's not a particularly kind of happy place to go for Norwich, or even at Carrow Road. They struggle against Liverpool. So Klopp won't want a replay. Do you think that's a potential scenario we could see?
If they get a replay, Norwich have done exceptionally well, I think is what I would say. It would be quite funny. I don't think Klopp would be particularly appreciative of that, if I'm honest. But look, I think if Norwich can go there and get anything, and for me on Sunday, what I'm going to be looking at, and I think probably what everyone else is going to be looking at, is performance. Can Norwich go there and apply themselves and be competitive and frustrate and prove that they're able to cause Liverpool some problems at both ends of the pitch, both from an obdurate perspective and from an attacking perspective? And look, the percentage in terms of Norwich City getting a result is so slight. It's so slight against one of the best teams in the world right now, top of the Premier League, as you say, competitive on all fronts, and probably pretty, if not favourites, then second favourites to Manchester City in all of those competitions that they're competing in. So it's going to be tough. And I've already seen one comment, for the one you've just flashed up there. Yeah, they don't have Salah, but they do have Gakpo and Diaz and Jota and Nunez, and oh goodness me, the list of kind of attacking players is incredible, really. So look, it's going to be tough, really, really tough. But I hope that they can go there and give those fans that are going something, whether that's a really good performance, whether that's a goal, whether that's, taking it to a replay. And this is a cup. Does funny things happen in one-off games, and the emotion could get too much for Liverpool. Norwich could turn up on the day. I still think Norwich are going to be have to be at 100% and hope that Liverpool's levels are significantly dropped in order to get even a replay out of this game. But look, funny things, stranger things, funnier things have happened, and that's why we all love the FA Cup, because it throws up the possibility to produce results like this.
Yeah, of course, Jurgen Klopp going to be reunited with David Wagner, very close friends. Those two, I think they faced each other 3 times in the past. Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp have won all 3. 2 games were 3-0. 1 game was 1-0. Of course, that was when David Wagner was at Huddersfield. Connor, how strong do you think David Wagner is going to go in terms of his Norwich City starting 11 for this game? Because, in the sort of previous games against Bristol Rovers, it's been a pretty strong team. I mean, you look at the sort of replay game, he started Gabriel Sarri, he started Johnny Rowe, but I think they spoke there about kind of the Anfield reward. It would feel kind of almost harsh on those players that got them through if they don't get the opportunity to play at Anfield, which many of them, haven't had that opportunity before.
Yeah, he'll go strong. I think there'll be some rotation. As we spoke about, Sargent wouldn't surprise me if, because of the load and whatnot, and what's kind of being lost a little bit. Some very, very important championship games on the horizon as well. Coventry next weekend. They've got Watford in a couple of weeks' time. They are games that will define whether or not Norwich City, or maybe not define, but certainly will shape whether or not Norwich City can get into the top 6 in the championship. So that is when you are really going to need Josh Sargent. Equally, you're right. There's going to be an element of players putting their hand up and going, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to be rested. I don't want to be rotated. I've got a full week after this to kind of recover and prepare for Coventry. So I guess it's about how much risk that David Wagner wants to take. But to be completely honest, I think if Norwich rotate to the levels that they did against Bristol City in the initial game in the 3rd round, goodness me, I would really, really fear for them in terms of what Liverpool could do to them. So I think he'll have to go full strength and hope, pray, on the footballing gods and on anything that could go their way goes their way. So I think he'll go fairly strong. What that looks like, I think it will probably look closer to maybe the team that ended or started the game against Bristol Rovers in the replay. And obviously the hope is then that, as I said, everything goes in your favour and you come away with a result, or if not a result, then most definitely a performance that you can reflect on with pride.
Yeah, we'll get your score prediction shortly. The theme of the comments are very much centred around the sort of transfer window, just under a week to go. So we've spoken there about kind of the rumours and sort of knowledge that we've brought to the table in the last hour. Shemi Plaheta looking like he's going to be exiting the Carrow Road door. Because David Wagner did speak about him last Saturday, wasn't it? After the West Brom game, Paddy asked him a question kind of around his future. I'll just quickly play that clip and then we'll get into it.
Because he wasn't involved today, unless you tell me this is maybe fitness related, but no Plaheta again today. He's not really been making the squads. Could he potentially be in a similar situation?
This is a difficult question, because I think we should be very, very careful not to limit it us in terms of numbers. At the minute, it looks, he didn't make the matchday squad, but everything can change in a week, we all together know. And this is exactly the competitiveness which I've spoken about, which we have in the group, that even a Shemi has not today made the matchday squad. And next match, maybe it is someone, another one, for whatever reason, tactical reasons, or for whatever reasons. And we have to be quite careful. I addressed this already to Ben, not to be too short in numbers if we not able to get somebody in. But the window is still open, and we will see what will happen.
Yeah, the update this morning: 6 months left on his contract. Been told he's free to leave the club. Rotherham United supposedly sort of the keen suitors for his transfer and his contract. Connor, just sort of on that situation. Shame for Shemi Plaheta. I mean, the sort of situations in the past with long COVID, and he's had sort of difficulties maybe adapting to Norwich City. 61 appearances, 2 goals, 4 assists throughout his career here. What do you make of a potential move to Rotherham for him?
Yeah, best for all parties. He's not going to get a new contract at Norwich City. He's entered the final 6 months of it. It's a little bit like Adam Forshaw, isn't it? If there's an opportunity that he can go and explore to get him and his family a really good deal, and secure his long-term future. And I think anyone who will read that report, hasn't read that report yet, it will be in the Championship, or with at least for now Championship club, rather than a return to Poland, which I think was mooted at one point, just purely because some of the financials involved. The caveat that I would add is I think some of the financials involved around his wages specifically, that will rule out some teams towards the lower end of the Championship as well. So I think it's still a little bit up in the air, but Norwich are definitely willing and happy to let him leave before Thursday's deadline, providing obviously him and his representatives can sort a deal out in the meantime. And Rotherham United, as we said, one of the few clubs in the Championship who are looking at him, and I think it's probably best suited to all parties if that does and will happen. And just to keep sort of people updated as well, because there's some tweets that have just gone out from Paddy around the transfer window, which maybe you'll ask me about. So maybe you want to come back to that. But in terms of Poeta, yeah, I think there's probably enough interest there that something will likely happen before the deadline. And as Finley points out in the comments, it'd be a nice reunion with Jordan Hugill if nothing else at Rotherham. So a player that's just not worked out for, a player that Norwich spent £3 million on. Obviously injuries, illness. He had a really rough battle with COVID that progressed into some heart issues. So there's quite a tragic tale there. But probably one that is going to be reflected on as one that maybe was money not particularly well spent for Norwich City. By the same token, if I think he's here beyond the deadline, which again we can't rule out at this stage, if that is a possibility, then you heard from David Wagner there, I think Norwich City will be more than content for that to be the case. I don't know if now you just want to rattle through some names and I'll kind of bring you up to date, but that might be easier given I know we've got limited time left on this broadcast.
Yeah, that was the plan. Staying on the theme of wingers, Jonathan Rowe, of course, being heavily linked to various Premier League clubs throughout this transfer window. Last night there was a report from John Percy at the Telegraph linking him to Aston Villa. It feels like it would have to be really silly money for him to be going in this window.
Yeah, it would have to start with a 2, so 20 million plus for me, and from what I gather for Norwich City to part with John Rowe before the end of the transfer window. As we sit here today, no bids, no sort of contacts with any clubs at this stage. I found those Villa reports interesting, particularly because of obviously what's going on in the background with Morgan Rogers in terms of they're trying to sign him, and the reports are that they've made a couple of bids. It would be classic late transfer window tactics to put John Rowe's name out there and a strong interest in John Rowe to try and get this deal at the other end moving. Sometimes these things can happen, but yes, as we sit here today, position unchanged, no offers in, contract talks still scheduled for the summer. I think it's far more likely that he departs then, but of course, Premier League clubs, remaining hours of transfer windows, that is a recipe for desperation. If someone comes and slaps down enough money on the table, then Norwich City would obviously, in their financial position and with everything going on at the moment, I think they would entertain that. But it would have to be, as we said, really, really silly money for that to happen. I don't see it happening. Football is a funny game. Let's see what happens in the next few days and obviously the next week or so.
Jonathan Varane, half-brother of Raphael Varane at Manchester United, a defensive midfielder. Lots of links around him and linking him to Norwich City. Of course, last week we kind of denied those links. Paddy's, of course, tweeted out more recent update around the situation. Just want to fill people in, Connor, on where that stands at the moment.
Yeah, so Jonathan Varane, I think he's for people who haven't seen, he's a player currently playing at Sporting Gijón in Spain who has been linked with them. I think there were some reports in France of a bid made, and we reported earlier this week that there's been categorically no bid made for Jonathan Varane. That is as it stands, really. There's reports in Spain of a €6 million release clause. Now, as is the case for every single player that plays in the Spanish system professionally, there has to be a release clause put in his contract. Therefore, it's always there to be activated. Norwich City won't be activating that for that sort of money. It would come as no surprise for anybody for anybody for me to say that. But what I think we have learned in the last few days is that he is a player of interest, but more in terms of the long to mid-term picture. And it sounds like, similarly to John Rowe, really, it might be a situation that gets parked for now and maybe picked up in the summer. But if they did, let's foresee a situation where they did go to Sporting Gijón and put some money on the table, and that all got accepted. He's not a player that I think is being viewed to impact things in the here and now. I think he's a player that maybe they've identified as being one who could impact them and improve them in the mid to long term future. But just to reiterate, no bids on the table at this stage.
Kenneth Bow, of course, making a lot of waves in the under-21s, scoring lots of goals out of contract this summer. I think a lot of Norwich fans may be fearing that it's going to be a similar situation to what happened with Alex Matos, and of course that departure to Chelsea, now on loan at Huddersfield. That situation, Connor and his contract. Just want to update people on where we are with that one as well.
Yeah, Kenneth Bow, I've said this on a couple of broadcasts. I've written it as well. I think it's very unlikely that he signs a new deal at Norwich City. There's one on the table. They've been in talks for a little while. He's very, very close friends with Alex Matos, which is a name that Norwich fans will remember, a young player who was in their academy who left at the end of his contract last summer. Norwich were able to negotiate a sell-on fee for him on top of any future deal. So if he's to leave Chelsea, Norwich are entitled to a little bit of money. And I think we're in a very similar situation with Kenneth Bow in that he is, by all accounts, frustrated by what he perceives to be a limited pathway for him at the football club and a limited pathway into the first team. As I said, I think there's similar representation to the one that Alex Matos got. Those two are very close friends. So that should come as no surprise. But for me, and it's just my opinion, losing him and losing Matos on free transfers, they've been long for me. I've done this job for 5 years in September. I know I look great. I've done it for 5 years in September. For basically since the start of that, people have been saying to me, Alex Matos, Kenneth Bow, these are the two in the academy that you really need to watch. And to lose them both on a free transfer, particularly given Norwich City's policy in terms of youth and wanting to graduate young players through their academy, that would be a major shame. Obviously, as Finlay points out, the good news is that they were able to get Elliot Miles on a professional deal, and he's a player who still has interest from some of the bigger clubs in the country, Tottenham Hotspur, Chelsea, to name a couple of those. And I'm led to believe both showed real interest before he signed his professional deal. Only turned 17 last Saturday. So the fact that Norwich City have got that done pretty quickly shows and illustrates how highly they rate him. But yeah, Kenneth Bow looking unlikely. I think the way we're heading is that he leaves the club on a free transfer in the summer. So, which again, just to wrap into some reports that came out, I think last weekend, about him potentially going out on loan. I don't see that with him being in the stage of the contractual cycle that he is. Again, I've been told there's some big clubs interested. I think Arsenal maybe being one of those. So one to keep an eye on in the months and weeks of what I think will be his remaining months as a Norwich City player, unfortunately.
Yeah, looking forward to watching Elliot Miles tomorrow afternoon at Old Trafford. Of course, the under-21s taking on Manchester United will be there. Looking forward to that one. Finally, Connor, before we round off the show, just want to get your sort of score predictions / thoughts on the game. Of course, as I said, Norwich not won at Anfield since '94. Is that going to change on Sunday afternoon?
Sadly not. No, sadly not. I wish I could sit here and confidently say it will, but I won't. Look, if Norwich City do it, I'm happy to do any kind of forfeit. I say any within reason. That people see it now. Maybe, I don't know, I'll eat a curry or something if Norwich go to Anfield and win, and we can do that on the podcast. It's not going to happen, sadly. I think so. Where I've got it in my mind, we were kind of talking about this a little bit on the way back, but I think if Norwich City can reduce it to 3 or under, I think they've done very well. But I am going to give them a goal. I'm going to go Liverpool 3, Norwich City 1. You?
Yeah, I could see something similar, to be honest. I'm sort of toyed between 3 and 4-1. I think, a lot depends on how strong Jurgen Klopp goes as well with his starting 11. Could imagine it being something quite similar to what he started against Fulham on Wednesday evening in the Carabao Cup, kind of the likes of Bradley and Kelleher, which are maybe not starters in their team, but, they're still going to have the likes of Diaz, Trent, Gakpo as we go on. So it's always going to be a difficult trip. Keenan Tully just mentioning the Klopp stepping down. We did speak about that at the start of the show. So if you head back and watch this on repeat, you can hear our thoughts on that one. And just finally, Connor, Finlay asking if any of the under-21s might potentially get loan moves before the end of the window.
Yeah, I could see it. Aidan Manning is one that was mentioned to me towards the start of the window that he could that he could go out on loan if there were suitors. But I think, to be honest, we're probably about there with that. I could see Poeta being maybe the outgoing that concludes it, unless obviously something else pops up for any one of those players who are out of contract come the end of the season. So let's see, but I'd be surprised.
There we go, Connie. We've got to go to Stonehenge and record a 1 hour podcast if we win. That's from Jeffman. A few comments just around the score predictions. Jeffman as well saying Paddy to pitch invade in the 92nd minute and scores a screamer that somehow counts 31-0 win. I think I saw a 3-2 defeat in here as well. So the mood's kind of, some positive, some negative. We'll see what we get. Of course, on Sunday we'll all be at Anfield, so we'll be joining you live with team news from 1:30 p.m. See what David Wagner decides to start. We'll of course be speaking to David Wagner this afternoon, 4 p.m. kickoff for his press conference. So all the team news surrounding Jonathan Rowe's hand injury and kind of all these transfer sort of lines will be spoken about by David Wagner. The Terrace Talk, I spoke to a Liverpool fan. That's up. You can go and hear the sort of thoughts from the Merseyside end. We also got Jurgen Klopp's press conference on our YouTube channel at the moment. Of course, as we mentioned, he's stepping down, so that might be well worth seeing what he thinks ahead of a reunion with David Wagner. That'll round off this show. Of course, enjoy your weekend if you're making the long trip to Anfield. Hopefully, Norwich can pull off a big shock and of course get a route into the 5th round of the FA